hard with my son because I know right from wrong on so many things. And we watch a race on TV at home, and I'll point out like, well, here's what happened there. And so it's different. Like I think if I were just a banker and my kid raced, like they don't get that same experience of learning. So when you ask that about the data and the cameras and all that, I don't know any different. And so that's very
Yeah.
normal to me. And so when I go over stuff with my son, it's probably at a much higher level than most dads are going to do because they don't know the difference in that. So I don't know. I wish that racing were as simple as it was when I was a kid. I
Yeah.
wish that you just like got in I just remember we had like a junky old trailer or a pickup truck, and you just threw it in and you went racing and you had all your junk in there. And it's just different now. Everything is very professional, and like you go to the go-kart races and everybody has a coach, and
Oh
there's
my.
video and there's data. It's much more advanced, but I mean kids are just way more prepared now than I played soccer and baseball. I did all kinds of stuff growing up and I raced also. Now, and I hate to say it, I'm that parent because I've told my son, I'm like, if you want to race, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to do it the best we can. We're not going to just kind of race or kind of do that. I'm like, you pick something and we're going to get really good at it. And I don't care what that is, but that's our plan.
I feel like when I go back, say 6 years ago, and I feel confident saying this, when I look at Dale Jr. or I look at Chase Elliott, I feel like that they absorbed growing up with Dale Sr. or Chase Elliott absorbed growing up with Bill Elliott. It's like these two drivers, Dale Jr. And of course Chase. And now I'm looking at your son Carter. He's got a wonderful Instagram page, and I want to talk about that. I feel like now this is me, straighten me out. I feel like Carter is doing the same thing that Dale Jr. and Chase Elliott did. I think Carter's absorbing you, and right away he's just going to be way better than if he didn't hang out with you. What do you think about that analogy?
Well, I've often wanted to ask, because here's the thing. Dale Jr. has no idea what it's like to grow up without a famous father. Like he doesn't know, like, and I've listened to his story, and of course there's goods and bads that come with all that. But I always like every time I'm around Dale or Ryan Blaney or Chase Elliott, I always kind of like ask questions like, what's that like? Because they don't know what it's like to be on the other side, and I don't know what it was like to grow up as them. And I ask those questions because
Mm.
I'm kind of curious for Carter's perspective on things. Like, well,
Oh,
like
good
it's
point.
just it's
Yeah.
just different, and I have told Carter, I'm like, listen, there will be so many great things that come from you being my kid. And I said, there'll also be some obstacles from you being my kid. I'm like, it's just the reality of it, like everyone's just gonna like I think that people assume that I have an endless bank account and
Mm.
that I just buy him everything, and it's not the
Yeah.
case. Like I tell him all the time, I'm like, listen, I try to express to him the cost of all this, and I have beat in his head, Kenny, that you can be the greatest driver and it doesn't mean you'll make it. But if you're a good salesman, you'll make it because that's just the reality of this. If you can sell yourself and market yourself, as long as you have the funding, you'll always get to race a car. But the flip side of that, I mean, there's just very few, and I think Larson's a great example, or maybe a Christopher Bell who's hot right now, didn't come from money, right? They kind of raced their way through, but there's not many of people that can pull that off.
When I go on Instagram, I see this incredibly well produced Instagram page, Carter McMurray one. And I even texted you and I said, Jamie, this Instagram page is out of sight. So, first of all, everybody go to Carter's Instagram page because you can see what he's doing. And boy, it's really good. So Carter, let's just start right there. Carter wanted to race. Do you remember when he
Oh
said,
yeah.
"Yeah"? Tell me
Oh
the
yeah.
moment.
We were, it's funny you say Instagram, and I will blame Clint Boyer and Kyle Larson because they bought their kids go-karts. And their
Oh,
kids are quite a bit younger. Well, not quite a bit younger. They're 2 years younger, 3 years younger than Carter. And because he was into golf. We did football. He loves football. Like he would totally play football if his mom would let him.
Mm.
Um, but they had bought their kids go-karts, and I just remember on the couch, and he's like, "Could we get a go-kart?" And I kinda looked at Christy, and I was like, "Oh, no." I'm like, "I don't that's just a terrible road to go down for us because it'll be very hard for me to just go have fun riding go-karts."
You'll be buying the $30,000
Right.
trailer.
Well, actually, I will tell you, I did the opposite. When I bought Carter his first cart, I bought an old go-kart. It was new, but it had never been put together, and I got a deal on it. I bought a Briggs engine, which is 1,000 bucks, and we just went and would go ride and ride and ride and ride. And what you forget, what I did not realize as a parent and someone that had driven, because Carter had been around racing his whole life, is that they don't know anything. You go to
Mm.
the racetrack and like they just don't. You just think they're gonna know everything, and they don't. And so there's a frustration level that comes with that. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, I didn't know." And I'm like, "Well, how do you not know?" And he's like, "I'm 10." I'm like,
Okay, stop right there. I got to interrupt you. So I was watching one of the videos on Instagram, and you said this is maybe 2 years ago. You said, "I have to remind myself that he looks like a man." You said Carter looks like a man, but at the time you said he's only 13. I think now
yeah.
he's 15. But do you remember when you said that?
Yeah, so he's 14 now. Here's what happened is that, and you know this because you knew me when I
Yeah.
was younger. I've always been a little kid, right? Like I've never been. I was always on the smaller side. And when I was 16, I looked 12, and when I was 12, I looked 8. I was just this little
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah.
Carter's not. Carter's bigger than me now, and he's 14 years old, and he's always been on the bigger end, and so. Yeah, you look at him and he looks like a man, but he's still just a boy,
I love
like.
this.
And so, like, I would yell at him, not yell, I would like discipline him, and I'm like, listen, I'd get mad, and I would see his eyes, like, and I'm like, oh my God, Jamie, I'm like, you gotta
He's
remember,
a
he's only
child.
he's only 13, yeah. And so, and those are good moments as a parent, though, to kind of take that all in, and yeah, it's a lesson.
Okay, so Carter has become a great race car driver. I'm going to use the word great because I watch. I watch the go kart races. Uh, he's very disciplined, stays in line when we're drafting, analytical. It's like he's a machine in his head already. But so we get through the go kart phase, and now Carter just got done making his smart modified tour debut in Florence, South Carolina. So it's fair to say here he is. You said 14 years old, and he's already in the big cars. He started 15th, and he finished fifth. I don't care how you race. I don't care about anything. That's hard to do. Tell me about. Was it a week or two ago that this happened? Tell me about this moment, the smart modified debut for your son.
Well, if I just have to back up a little bit, I would always get a little frustrated with parents that move their kids up too early.
Mm.
And I've watched a lot of kids at 12, 14 years old getting these late models and wreck everybody, destroy everything. And I was like, I'm never going to be that parent. And you have to be really careful saying things like that because we all turn into that parent. But part of the reason that we moved up, when I say we, Carter and I, is because in karting, size is everything and
Mm.
big's almost never better. And
Good
so
point.
we had to move up from like the smaller kids to like too early, I think, because he was too big for the carts, like the kid carts or the cadet carts. And then we had to go from like the juniors to the senior class too young as well because Carter got too big. And so you can still do it at that age, but you can't do it well because you're at a disadvantage arrow wise. You're at a disadvantage in like the weight transfer in a cart. So I had to move him up to the men's class in karting last year at age 13 because he was just too big. Like he actually did better against the men than he did the kids because just physically he's just big. And I really didn't have any intentions of this modified thing, but I've got some people that work within NASCAR that have been helping me with Carter, and they have been on me really hard to move him up. And the other thing that I've learned as a parent is that, and I'm gonna kind of go against what I said a second ago, where you say kids don't know anything. Kids learn really fast. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable how fast they pick up on things. And so they're like, listen, you need to get him into like a late model, or you need to get him into this. And we did the modifieds. I have no background in modifieds. I did that in Lebanon and Bolivar, but it was these IMCA modifieds that they just put pavement tires on and a sway bar. Like it was just a dirt car with a sway bar on it, basically.
Yeah.
And so, what Carter's do under these, it's a touring type modified. It has those massive tires on it and a huge engine. And I did that because it's significantly more affordable than a late model is. And
Mhm.
I felt like he was going to get as much experience at 100 lap races, saving tires, everything that goes with that, and I could do it at a significantly cheaper rate than, and it's just, it's about learning. And I have told Carter, and this is, I think, hard for people to process, but like we did legend cars last year, and then we're going to do a little bit of that this year, but we're doing this modified. And I've told Carter, I'm like, I don't ever want you to become the best at anything. I'm like, I want to move you up so that you're always challenged in what you're doing. I was like, I hope you can win quick, but I was like, we're never going to stay somewhere long enough for you to become good at it, because
Mm.
I just want you to always have to have, like, always have to, work harder than others to have success. Because eventually, when you get to the top level, it will get easier for you, because all of a sudden your experience level is going to almost be on par with where they are, and you will had to have worked harder than everyone else getting to that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. I remember Bobby Allison telling my big brother Rusty. Bobby Allison said, "When you are no longer good in the late models, you will be really good in the Cup Series." Bobby Allison felt like if Rusty was really good in the ASA type cars, the stock cars tour, Bobby just had that theory. So I'm just saying that every man has a theory about how to go about to be good. You both are in the same
Yeah,
realm. You both
yeah,
are in the same realm of thinking, maybe not identical, but
yeah.
uh, hey, I just want to acknowledge something for everybody out there. Man, I remember you going to Daytona International Motor Speedway with go karts, the lay
Mhm.
down carts. I mean, wow! There's so much to Jamie McMurray, everybody, and you know we just can't get to it all. Maybe there'll be a part two. Um, okay, so Carter's. I don't want to jump ahead, but man, from the outside looking in, I see. I mean, I kind of see this uh, Owen Larson. I see all these kids. I see yours maybe being. I think here we're gonna have another generation. I think your son Carter has everything it takes to be a NASCAR superstar. And I had somebody say, Kenny, why don't you start interviewing some of these kids? And I'm like, well, they're kids, I mean,
Yeah.
because we see them come and do. Jamie, do you see that? It was like yesterday we were, Chase Elliott was the new generation. Now they're men, you
Hey,
see
I
this new group.
remember, I remember Chase and Ryan Blaney on pit
Yeah.
road. And I'm like, those parents are wackos. Like, those kids are never gonna, it's so hard to make it to this level. I'm like, they'll never, I mean, how are they ever gonna make it? And now they both won a cup championship.
Crazy.
It is crazy. But I'm gonna tell you something about it. This has been really healthy for me as a driver, because like, you think about how many parents came up to you, Kenny, over the years, like, how do I get my kid in racing? How do I do
Oh,
this? How do I do
every
that?
week. Every
And
week.
and I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, I just, because there is no plan. There's no book that tells you how to do it, but it has made me significantly more sympathetic to all of those families and kids that are trying to make it, because I have a massive head start on them, right? Like, I kind of know these people within the industry, and as I'm trying to move my kid up, but it's hard, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost impossible to do it. And so as I see all these young kids, I love watching them. I mean, I just, I'm really into it now, and I know most of the younger generation that's moving up, because Carter has either raced with them in karting, like, as we maybe they were like Connor Zilic, when we first started running at Trackhouse here, Connor Zilic had the garage right next to us, and he's just this little kid, right?
Mm.
And as he moved up, it's been so much fun for me to watch that path of how they do that. So it's been pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, even this Brexton Bush. I mean, I'm looking at your son, Carter McMurray, Brexton Bush, Kyle Larson's kid. I mean,
Yeah,
the list
Keelan.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah, Keelan. Oh, yeah, Keelan Harvick. It's hard to
Yeah.
remember them all, but it looks to me like the ones that are really well advanced, real well oiled machines are Keelan Harvick and Brexton Bush. Wow, they are
Yep.
going to school right now, and those two, they definitely look like champions in the making. But I think Carter, I really feel like Carter's right there with them from
Yeah.
the way I watch him race. Okay. Um, Anything else you want to say about Carter?
No, no, I mean I would tell you that what I would tell all other parents out there that have kids that want to race is, and I remind myself of this all the time, is that it needs to be fun. Like as you're doing this, it
Mm.
can't be like I tell Carter all the time, I'm like, listen, we're gonna go do this, and if it works out, it works out. But like we need to enjoy the moment. Like it's because it is really racing is fun, right? And I feel like sometimes it turns into a job. And I just remind myself every weekend when we go do it, I'm like, who cares? Just have fun, enjoy the moment, and try to learn from it each weekend.